One Virginia-class submarine, the pinnacle of modern stealth and firepower, goes head-to-head with the full might of a legendary naval empire. Battleships, carriers, and destroyers fill the ocean, a vast fleet with one mission: total dominance. But with a single advanced submarine as their adversary, the outcome isn't as certain as they might believe. As we set the stage, we're diving into a moment in history that changed naval warfare forever: the Battle of Midway. This fierce 1942 clash saw the US and Japan fighting for control over the Pacific, with each side bringing everything they had. But now, with a single modern sub facing the entire Japanese fleet, we'll see how today's technology could rewrite the rules of the battle. Could one sub really pull off the impossible? Let's find out. It's June 1942. The Japanese Imperial Navy, riding a wave of confidence from recent victories, including the attack on Pearl Harbor and the Battle of the Coral Sea, sets its sights on Midway Atoll, believing that a decisive attack would cripple US naval power in the Pacific. However, the US Navy also understands the stakes of the incoming Midway battle all too well. That's precisely why it prepares to defend Midway with everything it has. Yet, instead of relying purely on conventional tactics of 1942, the US Navy will get a little creative. It'll go forward in time to borrow something a bit more advanced: a Virginia-class submarine. And not just any Virginia-class submarine, but the lead ship in the class, the USS Virginia, SSN 774. But here's the trick: the USS Virginia is all alone in this scenario. The Japanese fleet vastly outnumbers it, with battleships, cruisers, and aircraft carriers closing in. Here's the overview of the first carrier strike force our lone warrior will face. 4 fleet carriers: the Akagi, Kagi, Soryu, and Hiryu, each carrying roughly 60 aircraft, capable of devastating strikes and part of the 6-carrier fleet that had attacked Pearl Harbor 6 months earlier. 2 battleships, Haruna and Kirishima, heavily armed, bristling with long-range guns. 2 heavy cruisers, sister ships Tone and Chikuma, swift, powerful, and designed for long-range engagements. 12 destroyers, fast, nimble escorts protecting the fleet with anti-submarine warfare and torpedoes. 1 light cruiser, a smaller, versatile ship used to defend the fleet and provide anti-aircraft firepower. And 13 submarines, lurking beneath the waves, ready to ambush with torpedoes and posing a serious threat to any surface vessel. But that's just the thing: the USS Virginia isn't your typical World War II surface vessel. It's a stealthy, modern, nuclear-powered attack submarine equipped with state-of-the-art technology that the designers of these Japanese ships could not even have dreamed of. But here's the challenge: even though the Virginia has the technology to pick apart the Japanese fleet, it's just one submarine against an entire armada. Sure, it has the element of surprise, but it also has a finite supply of torpedoes and missiles, and there are a lot of targets. And we aren't just talking about the vessels directly involved in the battle. There's also the Midway support force and dozens of other vessels lurking close by. The odds sure are long, but let's allow this hypothetical scenario to play out. Back to the action. The Japanese fleet is preparing to unleash its might at the dawn of June 4, 1942. But unbeknownst to them, lurking beneath the waves is the USS Virginia, poised to rewrite the rules of engagement. The Virginia is 377 feet long, capable of reaching speeds of 25 knots when submerged, and is armed with 12 Tomahawk cruise missiles and 4 Mark 48 heavyweight torpedoes. However, it's its stealth capabilities and advanced sonar systems that will prove pivotal as it engages the Imperial Japanese Navy on Midway Atoll. Recognizing the opportunity to strike first undetected, the Virginia crew, consisting of approximately 132 personnel, prepares to unleash its missile payload. In a swift, calculated move, the submarine launches 4 Tomahawk cruise missiles. These $2 million missiles, equipped with state-of-the-art navigation systems, cut through the ocean at speeds faster than 550 miles per hour, targeting the Japanese aircraft carriers with pinpoint accuracy. Why the carriers? Targeting the aircraft carriers first is a strategic decision rooted in the very essence of naval warfare. Think of it this way: taking out the carriers first is the same as striking at the root of a tree. Without the carriers, the Japanese fleet's branches, its battleships, cruisers, and destroyers will be left exposed and vulnerable. Of course, there's always the added benefit of sowing chaos and confusion among the Japanese forces, forcing them to react defensively rather than offensively. So the first Tomahawk missile is launched, hitting the Akagi with devastating explosive force. The $36.45 million behemoth, which displaces 36,000 tons, is instantly transformed into a fiery wreckage. The impact ignites a chain reaction on the flight deck, devastating most of the 60 aircraft on board and inflicting critical damage on its command and control systems. Next, the second missile finds its mark on the Kaga, an 812-foot-long carrier with 72 parked aircraft. The missile detonates with brutal precision, leading to catastrophic fires that engulf the upper deck, turning this proud ship into a floating inferno. The third missile targets the Soryu, the smallest among the 4 carriers, and it too is demolished. The explosion instantly cripples operations, resulting in mass chaos as sailors scramble to combat fires and restore order amidst the destruction. Finally, the Virginia sets its sights on the Hiryu and its 66 aircraft aboard. Even though the battle has barely started, this move undoubtedly seals the fate of Japan's air power. As the 4th Tomahawk missile strikes true, the Japanese fleet feels the full weight of the assault. With its carriers severely damaged, the Japanese command structure begins to crumble, leaving the fleet's battleships, cruisers and destroyers to fend for themselves. As a reminder, the Virginia still has 8 Tomahawk missiles left after wreaking havoc on the Japanese aircraft carrier fleet. However, the time hasn't come for the US crew to fire those remaining missiles just yet. Instead, the crew recognizes that their best next move is tactical evasion. So the Virginia quickly descends to a depth of 600 feet. This depth allows the sub to evade the enemy's retaliatory measures as Japanese destroyers begin frantic searches for the source of the missile strikes. But why not continue firing off straight away? Well, the answer lies in 4 simple words: the importance of survival. Engaging in a missile-firing frenzy would only expose the Virginia's location, making it an easy target for the Japanese forces eager to avenge their sunken carriers. By choosing to evade instead, the crew allows the initial chaos to unfold and the Japanese forces to become distracted by their own damage control efforts. Staying submerged at 600 feet gives Virginia the advantage of stealth, allowing it to assess the battlefield and plan its next moves without drawing attention. With its advanced AN/BQQ-10 sonar suite, capable of detecting targets at impressive ranges, the Virginia is primed for a resurgence. Another wave of calculated strikes will come when the chaos among the Japanese forces reaches its peak. This peak comes some 2 hours after the initial strikes. Though the carriers haven't sunk yet, they're effectively dead in the water, desperately fighting to maintain any semblance of operational capability. With the Japanese fleet engulfed in chaos, utterly unaware of the true source of its misfortunes, the Virginia's crew recognizes a perfect window of opportunity to deliver another blow. The next target, the 2 Kongo-class fast battleships. The Kongo-class battleships were the most active ships in the Japanese Navy during World War II. The attack on Pearl Harbor, the invasion of Singapore, the naval battle of Guadalcanal, the Battle of Leyte Gulf, you name it, and they were there, dominating the waves. At 720 feet long and displacing over 31,000 tons of water, these ships were formidable, but their armor told a different story. Designed for speed and maneuverability, the Kongo-class sacrificed armor thickness for agility. The upper belt was just 6 inches thick, while the lower belt reached only 8 inches. Despite upgrades, the protection on these battleships pales in comparison to later designs. The turrets are lightly armored, with a maximum thickness of only 9 inches. Even the deck armor ranges from a mere 1.5 to 2.75 inches. But what do all these numbers mean for the Virginia? Well, it's simple. The Kongo-class battleships lack the heavy armor of newer ships, making them highly vulnerable to the Virginia's arsenal. So the stage is set for another devastating assault. This time, Virginia's crew positions the sub to deploy its Mark 48 torpedoes against the 2 battleships. Just like the Tomahawk cruise missiles with the aircraft carriers, 1 torpedo per battleship should do the trick. Each Mark 48 torpedo measures 19.5 feet in length and has a diameter of 21 inches. Weighing approximately 3,744 pounds, it carries a 650-pound high-explosive warhead that delivers a devastating blow upon impact. And this blow will come at a speed of over 63 knots, making the torpedo a fast-moving threat that's hard to evade. Hard for modern naval forces to counter, but nearly impossible for the aging Kongo-class battleships to avoid. Plus, these torpedoes are designed to penetrate the defenses of heavily armored vessels, so the Kongo-class battleship's relatively light armor will be no match for their destructive power. And so, the 2 torpedoes are fired in rapid succession. Each one can travel up to 27 nautical miles and adjust its path mid-flight for precision targeting, and each hits its intended target. The remaining fleet elements now realize that the Virginia wasn't just a minor threat, it's a harbinger of doom, their doom. So naturally, the Japanese fleet is now truly reeling. It's facing an invisible enemy and is unable to strike back. But wait a second, what about the Japanese submarines involved in the battle? Can they turn the tide? After all, in the actual historic battle, a single submarine, the I-168, managed to slip through the cordon of destroyers and sink the USS Haman with a salvo of torpedoes, killing 80 people on board. Well, the odds in this scenario aren't in their favor. Unlike the days of the I-168, where one audacious submarine could break through the chaos and score a devastating hit, the Virginia is a different beast altogether. Armed with the latest in stealth technology and equipped with highly advanced sonar systems, it's nearly invisible even to other submarines, and we're talking about modern submarines, not World War II relics. For them, the Virginia might as well be a ghost. Still, the Japanese subs might attempt to find and strike the Virginia, relying on passive sonar. Even if a sub has a lucky break amidst the noise and gets a torpedo lock on the Virginia, the torpedo would never actually reach its target. After all, the Virginia-class submarine is designed for survival in exactly these situations. Once the torpedo is launched, the Virginia's state-of-the-art countermeasures would spring into action, deploying decoys to confuse the incoming ordnance. These decoys mimic the acoustic signature of the sub, leading enemy torpedoes astray. Of course, this is the best-case scenario for the Japanese subs. In the worst case, the effectiveness of the Japanese subs would be severely hampered by the chaos above, with communications frayed and coordination with the surface fleet nearly non-existent. They would only have two choices. One, risk exposing themselves by launching a blind hit and becoming the next target to the Virginia's relentless pursuit, or two, remain hidden and bide their time, serving as nothing but witnesses to the destruction of their fleet. In either scenario, the Japanese subs are left powerless, caught between survival and the slim hope of a successful strike. Of course, there's always a third choice, fleeing the scene. It's a choice many of the original Japanese vessels made after suffering devastating losses in the Battle of Midway. But for the sake of our hypothetical scenario, let's say the Japanese fleet doesn't retreat just yet. Instead, it holds its position, trying to rally what's left of its forces. The fleet, now reduced to destroyers and cruisers, desperately attempts to coordinate a counterstrike amidst the chaos. But every attempt to track or engage the Virginia is futile. For the Virginia, however, this is a golden opportunity. As the Japanese vessels search for a phantom target, it's time to deliver the final curtain call in this maritime theater of war. Remember, there are 3 cruisers and dozens of destroyers and submarines left, and the Virginia has 2 more Mark 48 torpedoes and 8 Tomahawk cruise missiles left. This means that 1 projectile per ship is no longer an option. Luckily, both the Mark 48 torpedoes and the Tomahawk cruise missiles have quite a substantial blast radius that can affect the nearby ships that are huddled close together. So when it comes to the final attack, it's only a matter of strategy, waiting for the right moment to strike and maximize the impact. As the remaining destroyers cluster together, the Tomahawk missiles take them out, 1 cluster at a time. The 2 remaining Mark 48 torpedoes, however, are reserved for the heavy cruisers Tonei and Chikuma. Their powerful armament and maneuverability mean that they still pose a threat if left unchecked. With the destroyers in disarray, the Virginia's crew readies the 2 torpedoes, locking onto their targets. The torpedoes launch with a swift hiss, each honing in on its target and delivering a final, crippling blow. With all of the destroyers significantly damaged or utterly annihilated by missiles and the cruisers sent to the depths, the once mighty remnants of the Japanese fleet are reduced to nothing more than floating debris. This just leaves us with the submarines lurking in the shadows like the last desperate fighters in a losing battle. In a final act of desperation, they might try to launch a torpedo at the Virginia, hoping for a miracle shot. However, to do so, they would have to get close enough without revealing their position, which is a gamble that can't possibly pay off in our hypothetical scenario where the past meets the future. With no allies left and the specter of the Virginia looming beneath the surface, these submarines may soon realize that sometimes the best course of action is to quietly slip away into the depths. But let's not celebrate just yet. The question was whether a single modern sub could destroy the entire Japanese Navy during World War II. The key word here is entire, of course. Now, this is where we come to the challenges the Virginia would face if it attempted to sustain a prolonged operation against an entire navy, or what's left of it at least. And let us tell you, these challenges are far from hypothetical. First and foremost, logistics would rear its head like an angry kraken. While the Virginia is equipped for extended missions, the lack of resupply options in hostile waters could strain its capabilities. Fresh food, fuel, and maintenance supplies are all essential, and a sub can only go so long before it's forced to break cover to refuel or restock, putting it at risk. However, after the real-life Battle of Midway, a US submarine base was established on Naval Air Facility Midway Island, allowing the submarines operating from Pearl Harbor to refuel and reprovision, thus extending their radius of operations by 1,200 miles. So let's say the first challenge could theoretically be overcome. But as the Virginia rests in the comparative safety of Midway, another challenge looms: intelligence gathering. The remaining Japanese forces are regrouping, understanding that their next movements will be crucial. With the loss of many of their larger ships, they will rely on their submarines and smaller vessels to defend their territory. To counter this challenge, the Virginia can deploy its advanced sonar systems to monitor enemy activity. The crew listens intently for any signs of communication or movement from the Japanese fleet, piecing together a picture of their capabilities and plans. But speaking of the crew, let's not forget about the psychological factor. Sustaining morale while operating solo in enemy waters is no small feat. The crew would need to maintain focus and cohesion under immense pressure, with isolation leading to stress and second-guessing decisions. The solution? Take out the entire Imperial Japanese Navy so they can all go home in a blaze of glory, right? Well, not quite. This is where the most significant challenge arises, the reality of being a lone submarine with no weapons left. While the idea of taking out the entire Japanese Imperial Navy is plausible from a technological standpoint, the unfortunate truth is that the Virginia is now a sitting duck in enemy waters with its arsenal depleted. After all, it's not like the Virginia can just swing by a local submarine supply store for a quick refill on torpedoes and missiles. In reality, the key arsenal of this mighty submarine didn't even exist during World War II. The Mark 48 torpedo has been in service since 1972, while the Tomahawk missile family first joined the game in 1983. But then again, we are talking about a hypothetical and quite absurd scenario. It's not like there is a reality where a modern naval vessel could actually travel back in time, so let's push the boundaries of imagination a bit further. Let's say the Virginia can, somehow, replace its armaments. Could it then go after the entire Japanese Navy? The answer is no longer a resounding no, it's now a firm maybe. Here's what critical factors would have to align for the Virginia to succeed in this audacious mission. Even with the Virginia's technological advantages, the sub would still be vastly outnumbered, even after obliterating the first carrier strike force. There are still plenty of destroyers, destroyer escorts, cruisers, battleships, and submarines to go around. So coordinated attacks would be essential, with the Virginia relying on hit-and-run tactics to maximize its impact while minimizing exposure to enemy fire. In addition, logistics would remain a critical factor. Assuming the Virginia could somehow replenish its arsenal, the sub would still need a way to sustain operations without drawing attention. This includes maintaining a low profile, identifying and utilizing discrete locations for resupply, and restocking essential resources at a safe base of operations. Now let's say all the conditions are met for the USS Virginia to continue its campaign against Japan. How would this sub proceed after emerging victorious in the Battle of Midway? Well, key logistical hubs like Kiska and Attu Islands would become priority targets. Thanks to its speed of over 25 knots, the Virginia could execute hit-and-run tactics against slower supply ships. However, even with its nuclear power allowing for extended operations without the need for refueling, challenges remain. There's also the risk of reaching the Japanese mainland while initiating pursuit. Why is it a risk? Because the Virginia would be entering waters heavily defended by Japanese forces. The mainland would likely be protected by shore-based anti-aircraft systems, naval assets, and a network of submarines poised to engage intruders. Additionally, the opportunity for ambushes becomes a pressing concern. Think of it this way. The Imperial Navy has just had its precious naval assets decimated by a single vessel. What remains of this navy will surely plan for a counteroffensive. Throw in the limited escape routes, the added danger of minefields around the coastline, and the challenges of operational longevity into the mix, and you'll quickly understand why every moment spent close to the Japanese mainland might prove to be a deadly gamble. So what does this mean for the fate of the remaining Japanese World War II Navy? It means that if they remain close to the shore, their chances of survival significantly increase. Additionally, if the Japanese fleet disperses and employs evasive maneuvers, the Virginia's ability to target and destroy individual ships could be hampered. The narrow waterways and coastal geography would limit the sub's maneuverability, making it more difficult to engage multiple vessels at once. Ultimately, while the USS Virginia undoubtedly possesses the technological capability to destroy the entire Imperial Japanese Navy, the unique circumstances of our hypothetical scenario could allow some of this fleet to evade destruction. Do you agree? Do you think that a single Virginia-class submarine wouldn't be able to take out the entire Imperial Japanese Navy from a logistical standpoint? Or do you think the sub's technological advantages would somehow outweigh these challenges, allowing it to achieve its mission despite operating in isolation? If so, share a brief overview of this hypothetical scenario in the comments section below. We're looking forward to hearing all of your ideas. Now go and check out The World Today If Hitler Never Lost, or click this other video instead.